Welcome to the Cybersecurity Matters podcast. Your hosts today are me, Harry Baldwin, and Matt Rose, two members of the Nuco Cyber team, and we're delighted to be joined today by co-founder and CPO of Mondoo, Dominik Richter. Dom is a founder, coder, and hacker, and one of the creators of Mondoo. He's helped shape the DevOps and security space through projects like Chef InSpec and DevSec.io, and has worked in security and automation at companies including Google, Chef, and Deutsche Telekom. Today, he's focused on building Mondoo and helping organizations better understand, prioritize, and fix security risks across modern, complex environments. Welcome to the show, Dom. It's great to have you here.
It's great to be here. Good to see you guys.
Thank you so much for joining us. We are looking forward to getting into all things about you and career and many things. But to get us started, we always love to start on the same first question. How did you get into the security industry in the first place?
So this is going to sound a little bit ridiculous, but I was really inspired by the 1995 film Hackers. Not just because of Angelina Jolie, I'll be honest, but because of everything else was so cool on it. It led me down the journey of trying to learn how to break into computers, 2600 magazine, looking at bulletin boards. Yeah, my life would have been very different if it hadn't been for that movie.
What do you think you would have got into if it wasn't security? Did you have any other passions growing up apart from hackers and maybe Angelina Jolie?
Not really, honestly. It got me onto the computer track really, really early on and didn't go off of it. I've had this discussion with friends a number of times, like, what does a person like me do? Would I have ended up, running like a bakery or something like my parents? No idea, but here we are.
So your parents are bakers then?
They are on the countryside in the middle of Germany, so that's where I'm originally from.
Very nice. So, well, maybe it's another podcast, but we'd definitely be open to hearing recommendation on German pastries and bakeries. But anyway, I need to definitely hand over to Matt, who is going to run some questions by you on your career so far. So, yeah, over to you, Matt.
Thanks, Harry. Um, well, to kind of start off more focused on your kind of career to date, Dom, I'm keen, aside from Angelina Jolie, um, if there's anyone along the way from your transition towards, you know, founding a business, that's kind of, inspired you more in the business sense to become into kind of leading your own business.
Yeah, I think I've had a lot of smaller influences. I wouldn't say it's one person, but I think it's a collection of mentors that I have had over the years that I'm incredibly grateful to that led me down this path. There's also a few speakers. I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek, for instance. He is one of those with his principles around how you build teams and how you build culture that has really influenced me and saying, this is what I'm trying to do within the confines of my own business. So,
Fantastic. And what stands out to you in your career as your biggest achievement to date?
I don't think there's like one biggest one. It kind of changes every year. But if I look at it right now, the biggest thing is probably this extensible security graph that I built within Mondoo. Was the whole idea of making security into something that doesn't have to change every year, where you have to learn a new tool, especially with the recent technologies that came in. I was actually really proud that we were able to dynamically extend to those and add them to it and come to the same kind of answers with a system that we, started to build 5 years ago. So probably that.
And from the start of your career to now, obviously the cybersecurity industry is in a constant state of transformation. Um, how do you go about adapting to that transformation as a founder or prior to that as well? And what are some of the main kind of changes that you've seen?
So transformation has been with me ever since I started, if I'm honest. I got into a lot of the AI bits in 2008, actually, originally because we were doing language models and analysis. This is like years ago at this point, in the middle of Korea, getting blocked by Wikipedia and other pages because we were being way too aggressive with them. Over the years, I've seen cloud come in, I've seen Kubernetes and containers come in, I've seen all kinds of services coming in. So transformation, if you are in security, is basically name of the game. You constantly have to be on top of it. If I look at the last couple of years, we've had a moment similar to the introduction of cloud itself, with all of the AI stuff coming in, where it's a little bit like a Wild West. And in security, I always see this as an opportunity because every new type of technology that there is out there, people will forget their heads. Like they will just jump right into it and not think about security necessarily. And I think we're seeing the same thing again right now. So in security, if you're here, this is an opportunity. Go after it.
Fantastic. And across your career, you've worked for some really significant businesses, including Google and Chef. What would you say are some of the kind of biggest experiences that you've taken from that and kind of help you along your way now?
Yeah, you mentioned it in the beginning where I've worked before, right? Chef Software was the one that acquired this small German startup that my co-founder and I did initially. And for me, this was the step into the US startup market, into US IT companies and building that out. Like it really taught me how you build out this fledgling small idea into a larger business and actually try to run it as a business. The good thing there was that they already had a lot of the gears turning within the company. So they had marketing, they had sales. So I was able to just plug into that engine and make a lot of things work. Google was interesting for another reason for me because they have scale, like a crazy scale. Even when you're on a team there and you're trying to add a component within Google Cloud that customers are going to see, it takes a lot of convincing. It takes a lot of people to make that happen. And for me there, it was all about understanding how to get to that scale. And at the end of the day, understanding that, look, this is all just technology. Like this is just people like you and me building it out. Yes, at a different scale, but with the same kind of tech. Although admittedly, Google has a lot of their own tools internally.
And was there a moment when you're working for companies like these, where you decided, to build something, yourself? What was that moment? What was that kind of inspiration?
I had that moment 2 times. So the first time was at Deutsche Telekom. Again, this is the largest telco in Europe for context. So we were in a pretty large company too, and we tried to move security, like significantly move security. And so this is where the original open source projects came from, which we pushed out. And then we had this idea and we're like, okay, let's turn this into a startup. So because we couldn't move as quickly as we wanted within that company, even though they allowed us to do the open source journey previously as well. The second time I've had this was within Google, because different scale and different IT, but the same thing happened again. I saw a lot of the tool sprawl that was going on. I saw the complexity that was going on out there. I saw how careless people were around their infrastructure. Like if you come from a pen testing background, so hackers inspired me to go into pen testing, break into computers, you see a lot of the things that can go wrong. And for me, what was always interesting was finding the hard problems, getting into these systems. That was the exciting thing. But then what I ended up exploiting was oftentimes easy mistakes that people made around configuration, around patching. And I was like, why is this so hard? Like, why can't people get this right? And I think this was the second time that inspired me to go into a startup, because you can't even start to address a problem like this in a big company. But in a small one, you can put your idea out there and you can see if it's going to have traction or not. And that's what I did.
Fantastic. Well, I think you raised some really important things, and I'm sure along the way when starting your own startup, people really are at the center of that. So I know that Harry's got some questions focused around talent that he'd love to ask you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Matt, and thanks for some really interesting answers so far, Dom. Yeah, on to the topic that is people. We spoke about it a little bit before the podcast on how the talent and recruitment industry is being really impacted by AI and is also in a bit of a change and transformation as well. But from your perspective as a business leader and a hiring manager previously, obviously, what, in your view, are the key talent topics and key themes that you're seeing today, and what do you think needs addressing?
Yeah, so I think I would start with saying startups are hard. They're really, really, really hard. Um, you will get people into your hiring pipeline that don't fit the mold quite as well, even though they think that they just, want to have this interesting job at this small company. I'm also blaming a little bit like movies for this, for misrepresenting what startups are. As a fan myself of watching shows like Silicon Valley, which at times is eerily close to reality. But startups aren't just fun and games, unfortunately. Like you're going through a lot of hard transitions, and in hiring, you're trying to find somebody that is willing to do this with you. I think it's very rewarding, right? Like, I'm not saying it's all bad, but it is also a tough job to get into. Typically, when I'm looking for people that want to do this, I'm looking for people that want to have a certain degree of freedom, that want to test their mettle. They want to see what they can achieve. They want to see what they can get to. Because in larger companies, you have more of a safety net, but also more restrictions placed on you. And in startups, that is, much less so. There's fewer restrictions. There is more ways that you can go into, and have to, honestly. When you're presented with crazy problems that are going on in the market, or when you're presented with a market that is transforming itself as much as this one is, you're not waiting for anyone to give you permission. Like, you have to jump in and solve these very new challenges that we are now facing. So deal with ambiguity, and be like solution oriented to figure out what you need to do. I think those are some of the things that I'm really looking for when I'm looking to hire people.
I
Yeah,
just have
no,
a
go on,
quick
Matt.
question on that, Harry. I mean, are these traits that you've picked up along the way from your own startup experience? Did you have an idea of that's what it took, or is this something that you've learned along the way during your own experience too?
I did. So when I'm having these discussions with friends, sometimes they're like, I'm talking about a problem that I've had, let's say, for instance, on the marketing side. And then they're like, well, don't you have a person for that? Like, that's not your job, is it? And I'm like, dude, it's a startup. Like, yes, it is my job too. Like, of course, I'm going to work with them, but ultimately, you're trying to figure out what you need to do for the company first and foremost. Because, and by the way, this is not the company just as an abstract concept. In my head, it is this group of people together, all of us, that are trying to solve a problem for this other group of people, i.e. the people that we're providing a service to. And I'm trying not to let either of them down. So I'm trying to be a good partner to all of them. And so that's why you think less about the strict roles or what would I have traditionally done. This is very different from the work that I did in the large companies like Google or Deutsche Telekom. But there are some levels of overlap, like some qualities that I'm especially now looking for that are important in this. Like, for instance, having somebody said this about somebody else years ago. They were like introducing the person. They were said, hey, this is so and so. He is amazing. He has got no ego. And that's something that I picked up on. The no ego quote, I think in startups is especially important too. That's like something that you're really looking for when you're starting to build this out.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's a great question, Matt, as well. I think what's interesting is how do you assess that in candidates, right? Because it's kind of like an emotional soft skill quality. And yes,
Yeah,
recent tenures are often an indication, but it feels like something, finer from a detail perspective. And in startups, the cost
yeah,
of getting a hire wrong it can be quite significant. How do you assess those skills? Is it about FaceTime with the
yeah.
person? Is it about recent tenures? Is it a mixture of everything? How do you assess those skills?
So in my experience, it's especially about what you do in the interview with the person. I learned a lot about the structural interviews when I was at Google, because again, the machine is so big that they really are trying to structure the interviews in certain ways, and then every person is responsible for one part of the overall thing. Being very intentional when you structure your interviews as well in startups and making sure you break up these topics is one of the things that I highly recommend. The other thing that I always do in the interviews is it's almost like, when you talk to you can get a lot of answers out of AIs and Googles today. When I'm having an interview, I'm really looking for who the person is and how they deal in the person-to-person interaction. And so I will always place questions to challenge them a little bit on that, or to see certain reactions that I'm interested in. I will sometimes give them questions that are intentionally misleading. I don't want to trick them, where I'm giving them questions that don't have a perfect answer. Or when they present something to me, they're really proud of their results, I will intentionally give them a counterpoint, even if I don't believe it. I will try to counter it and see how do they interact with me. The thing that I just said about ego, you can start to
Yeah,
suss out there. Or the other thing that's really important for startups is you have to be willing to be wrong and to learn. It's this, like, don't be afraid to have failures. Like, don't be afraid to say something that is wrong. But it is in the moment when you say something wrong, what you do next matters. How do you interact with people about that? Do you reflect? Do you try to understand? Also, by the way, when I, ask some of these questions, when I'm intentionally wrong, I want them to reflect, but I also want them to be able to hold the ground and come back,
yeah.
right? Like, it is not just about the candidate then trying to appease me and just say what I want to hear. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Because
these small things that I really value.
I mean, it's really, really interesting. I mean, you've got to make the right hire, and challenging someone to sometimes do something which is a little bit out of their job spec, or sometimes would be deemed, a bit more junior for them. A classic one is startup sales hiring, where when you speak to people, they have to be willing to do the hard yards in prospecting, and not to rely on a inbound stream to prop up what they're doing. So, like, I totally agree with you. You've really got to drill into some of those skills. I could honestly do a whole podcast on that, but I know we've got some other sections we need to go on to. A couple of questions actually. Mondoo has grown in a really strong, positive, organic way, right? You've been in a great position right now. Has the approach to hiring changed? Because quite typically we see businesses hire within their network initially,
Yeah.
but the network comes to a point where it sometimes runs out and the skills sometimes change a little bit. Have you guys reached that point, or are you still looking for the same kind of people as you were back when you were 10 or 15 people?
Oh my God, it has changed so much. It really, really changed. Not just that we hired from our network, and we've had some amazing people from that. A lot of those who are still with us, I have to say. We were very lucky with the people that we were able to hire from our network. But also hiring outside the network, we've gotten some great leads, and that has certainly changed. There is different aspects for both engineers and for sales, since you mentioned sales a second ago too. I think sales was the one that I had to learn the most about how to hire and hire well. Nothing could have prepared me for this, including talking to advisors who all, are doing this for a living as well. Going through it yourself and having these experiences and learning what it means to hire a good salesperson was one of the biggest learnings in those 4 or 5 years that I've had by far. The hiring process there has changed the most. For engineers, however, too, because of the whole AI boom, right? And now more than ever, I think I need great engineers on my team. This might be contradictory to what everybody else is saying, but I actually need amazing engineers. And so those are people, the skills are different, right? So in the beginning, I would give them a challenging problem and I would let them code it up and explain it to me. And we didn't have AI coding agents at that point. And now we do. And so I want them, like part of the interview is with a coding agent, part of them is without it. The skills that I'm really looking for are people that understand the problems, they know how to break up these problems and design a system, and people that look out for the user. I think certain aspects haven't changed, like looking out for the user, and then other aspects have changed, like the willingness to work with these AI tools while still guiding them and adding your own elements on top of it. That has certainly remained. Collaboration has remained. The way that we work together and interact together has remained, and the problem-solving aspect, for sure.
Yeah, fantastic. Great answers. I mean, as I mentioned, we could do a whole podcast on it, but we need to move on to our main topic that matters this week on this podcast. So, actually, before we jump in, I want to ask where the name Mondoo came from. What was the inspiration behind the name? I'm sure there's a good story.
Some people know the company in the US that prints movie posters. It's not that. Some people know the Korean dumplings, Mondoo. There's actually an early design that we had with the Korean dumplings as the logo, which was
Cool.
really, really funny. Mondoo. But Mondoo actually comes from the German term Mond, which means moon, and then the 2 O's added because it makes for like a really, really nice lettering. The moon idea comes from space. So we actually started, and I mentioned this in the beginning, one of the things that I'm really proud of was the security graph that we built out that allowed us to extend securities to new technologies, because every 5 to 10 years you've got another technology revolution going through, going from from clouds to containers, Kubernetes, now into AI. And when we started this, the AI thing certainly wasn't as big, and we wanted to have a system that was extensible into that. And so this giant graph idea essentially came up, and it's almost like the universe of planets all being connected in a certain way. You're going out there, you're exploring things, you're shining light into the dark. And so the universe was with us, and we started to use the term Mond for one of the engines, the internal engines around that graph. And so that's where the name Mondoo came from.
Very cool. I mean, we've heard some stories around some names, and I'm sure you've walked the floor at RSA, and lots of names usually have the word cyber or a associated word or some interesting animal as their logo. But I love the story behind Mondoo and what you guys doing. I mean, the AI topic we've spoken about it a little bit, and I'm sure you've talked about it to absolute death. But we'd love to hear your take on it. How broadly, how do you see AI changing the security landscape specifically today?
Yeah, and I think my answer to this has also changed within the last 2 years, even most recently within the last 6 months, with some of the recent innovations around the coding and the models that we have had in the last 6 months. Things have certainly changed again. So I think one of the big things is that AI helps us find vulnerabilities faster than ever. It started with the AI coding challenges at DEF CON last year. So DEF CON, one of the biggest cyber events out there. They've run a coding challenge, I think, for the last 2 or 3 years now. I've been watching it, where they looked into the big open source projects and they tried to find vulnerabilities within them using AI. They put a time restriction on it for the teams. So they had to, find vulnerabilities within a short amount of time and see how many they can find, verify, and also fix. That challenge, plus, more recently, people know about the whole Mythos thing because Anthropic did an amazing job in marketing that out and what they can do. Ultimately, what this means for me is there's a lot more vulnerabilities coming in. you're producing a lot more code with the help of AI, which is increasing complexity more than ever because you're building these systems up faster than ever. And then attackers are using more automation in their attacks than we have ever seen. So honestly, our job has become more and more important because of the rise of AI.
Yeah. Are you more excited about the impact of AI, or are you more wary about it? And yeah, and specifically, I'm keen to hear what excites you about it as well.
Yeah, so I would say I'm leaning more on the excited end because AI opened a lot of possibilities for automation that haven't existed like this for a very long time. So I mentioned that I was acquired by Chef Software, and Chef built this universe of automation technologies to bring mechanisms that Facebook and Google and Microsoft were using for automation to other companies out there. But one of the things that was always hard about this level of automation is that you still have to have these specialized platform engineers that were able to learn this technology and then build out the automation. Even at that time, the DevOps movement was all about democratizing access to it and getting more and more people to commit changes to these DevOps platforms. There was still also the limitation that only a few companies could do that. Like, I think maybe 40% of the large companies out there were able to successfully implement it. And with AI, you now actually have the ability to do this level of automation and introduce new mechanism solutions in code faster than ever, because one of the things that AI is actually good at is to produce code. Like, it actually does that really, really well.
Yeah, no, it's very exciting. And where do you think AI still falls a little short when it comes to security and infrastructure? Like, what do you think are the areas where it's lacking?
Yeah, and I think this goes back to the opportunities that I mentioned earlier. AI, since it is such an exciting technology and everything is so new and shiny, there are a lot of unknowns. And from my perspective, there are a lot of known unknowns. So we can see more and more areas where people are not paying attention when they're adopting AI. Companies are falling over themselves, trying to adopt it very, very quickly and force it into their teams, and oftentimes in ways that do not fully understand all aspects of security. We've seen this with the adoption of every new technology. You have to jump to it, especially with something like this. And security is getting pushed to make it happen because security is usually the blocker. So there's more pressure on security to, let it go and let it through. From my experience, one of the things that we found ourselves was we started to look into how skills are doing. With the recent couple of months, you have had skills being introduced in all major coding agents that are out there. And so we started to look into these skills and wanted to see how secure are they. And it's a little bit of a nightmare right now. So these aspects worry me, particularly for companies that put themselves at risks of getting hacked. Especially if I'm banking with them, for example, then I prefer they think about this a little bit more before they adopt it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And before we wrap up with a couple of questions about Mondoo, I'm curious to hear, you spoke really well about talent and people in the industry. Do you think that AI will reduce the need for human expertise, or do you think it makes it more important, or is the net outcome kind of the same? What do you think?
So the need has certainly changed. I've seen this myself. All of the coding skills that I learned over decades, all of that changed overnight, right? Like within months, that wasn't necessary anymore. The requirements though change, and if you watch very, very carefully, you will see the new requirements that are out there that are now needed more than ever. I have watched myself, by the way, do more in product building than I ever have. If I look at my own company, right, like I have UX contribute to our UI repo to code directly. I have product managers contribute to it directly. The job for our engineers is massively changing because not just because AI does a whole bunch of the things that they did before, but because I actually need systems in place to make the other roles more effective in working with the AI. So the need is certainly changing. I don't know if this will be a net, plus minus, like will we need the same amount of people that we needed before? That I'm still racking my brain around. But what I do see is that I have a massive need right now in this company for people that understand how to solve customer problems, understand how to build these complex systems, and do this well with the help of AI. AI is not a panacea for everything, right? Like there's certain things it does well, and then there's other things that it's doing horribly on. I need people that know how to use this tool at a time when it's still so new that most of the patterns are still being found out. Like even for us, there's something new we learn every single week with it. And so people that understand how to solve problems, people that understand how to work well together, people that understand how to focus on the customer, all of that now is more necessary than ever before.
Yeah, brilliant answer. I think it goes back to your point on soft skills, right? And being curious and wanting to learn and challenge yourself, and be excited by this kind of opportunity. No, so that's brilliant. Couple final questions on Mondoo. For those who might know, tell us a bit about what you guys do and what the main problem you solve is.
Yeah, so we are in vulnerability management. Sounds like an old school problem. Turns out if you're a pen tester, you're like, yeah, why do people always do these things wrong? Those are the easy problems. But the crazy thing to me is it's an unsolved problem, and it has been for the last 15 or 20 years. So we are a agentic variant of the whole thing. Agentic just means we want more automation within that and how we solve these problems. We want to keep companies and people proactively secure. I think a lot of attention and money has gone to the reactive security. Once I'm getting hacked or once there's hackers in my fields trying to catch them and see it, I'm here to say, okay, how about we prevent a lot of the bad things that can happen and focus on proactively closing these holes. Mondoo itself, we're very focused on prioritization and remediation. I think those are two aspects that have been undervalued and underlooked. Prioritization to really make it simple and focus on the things that are going to help you as a company. You're getting flooded with results, especially with these AI tools these days. There's a lot of slop tools that are just producing more and more noise for people. So I think prioritization plays a bigger role than ever now that we're flooded more and more. I actually want to focus on the things that are going to help me move. And then remediation, get out of your just security only shoes and really see it as a company problem. Why are your teams moving so slowly on these security issues that you're throwing over? And when you start to take a look at it and you start to understand that this is, your ops colleagues are often people that are under pressure to do certain features and to help with P0s for customers, and then they're getting flooded by you with your security issues. The more you can help them, the more you can introduce automation there to understand the operational considerations, to understand the technologies that they are using and making this rollout easier, the better you will actually do in your overall security posture. And so that's what we set as a goal. We are actually trying to make a difference in the posture of security and not just throw more results at the wall.
Yeah, brilliant. And how are you incorporating AI into prioritization and remediation, maybe specifically? Like how is that supporting what you guys are doing? Or is it not quite there yet? Where is it at for you guys?
It's in every aspect of it. So we incorporated both in prioritization as well as in the remediation aspects. I try to say that 3 times in a row. We have it for the prioritization, we use a mixture of smaller distinct agents that are looking for things like business criticality, attack surface, blast radius, is it in the news, is it exploitable, and so on, and are bringing that together. This is one aspect of AI, and then the other one is in the remediation, especially when you look at the operational considerations that I mentioned. So things like, can I reboot the system? Do I need to do backups? Backup and restore, the funny story there is everybody wants to restore, nobody wants to back up. And you can't have one without the other, so seeing what you're getting into ahead of time and knowing that it is safe, this is where AI helps. Also, the whole agentic AI, I think a lot of it has been misused, but to me, honestly, it's about using the automation technologies that I mentioned earlier, from companies like HashiCorp, Terraform, Chef, and so on, using them effectively with the help of AI to fix the issues that are out there. So agents can basically produce code really, really well. So they can produce code for the automation really, really well and help you roll that out. So in all of those aspects, basically any one of our customer is in one way or another getting impacted by this too. I think the last thing I would say around this is we're using it in every aspect of the company. And I've been very critical of AI, especially last year when I thought the hype was really, really high with, Gen AI, and it wasn't really effective yet. Right now, like with the changes that we have seen in the last 4 months, I have everybody at this company using it from marketing to, for instance, make changes to the website, to product, UX. I mentioned all the other teams before. Again, it's not a panacea, but it is a powerful tool. So you need to figure out what it does well and just explore and try it. So that's the one recommendation I can give to anyone who is listening to this. And really try to understand how it solves the real problems that people have and that companies have out there. So yeah.
Love it. I mean, I think that's a great answer and great advice. Really interesting to see how you guys are incorporating it into everything that you do. That's great. Final question, and then we have to wrap up. What one piece of advice would you give to someone entering the cybersecurity industry?
Yep. So I would probably structure my advice around AI again, because look, it is on everybody's mind. So one piece of advice that I can tell you is we are all trying to figure it out. I know some companies out there, they will market their things really, really well to be like, we know the answer, we've got the future of whatever solution that they're working on. The reality is, at the end of the day, we are all trying to figure out this AI thing that is currently going on there together. Do not be afraid. Jump into it, understand what it does well, what it doesn't well, learn and understand how to differentiate. At the end of the day, we are all still a group of people. Like, we're at the point where a bunch of AI does all of our work and we live at the beach, right? We're still a group of people trying to solve problems together. Don't be afraid to jump into it. Figure out how to solve the hard problems in companies using some of the modern tools. I think that's the one piece of advice. Like, even if you jump into cyber, all of this AI stuff has just added a whole bunch of new challenges. So don't be afraid to explore, prod, and learn and see what you can find.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Dom. It's a brilliant podcast. It's been great hearing all your thoughts and insights. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.